Last year, the number of children in Iowa needing foster care outweighed the number of licensed foster parents. 4 Oaks, the state's contractor that supports foster families, tells me foster homes have been decreasing over the past 5 years.
I want to provide that safe foundation and stability and support for other kids.
In January, just after she got her foster license, Brittany Souter from Harvey expanded her family of 4.
The girl that's been with us since January, she's really grown a lot in the last 3 months.
Through her license, Souter was approved to foster 1 more child.
After we got our first kiddo, we still had the open bed, and I took about 25 calls-ish in the matter of a week.
According to 4 Oaks, last year in Iowa, there were about 2,400 children with referrals to a foster home compared to only about 1,700 licensed foster families.
Iowa is facing a really significant crisis right now. We are seeing insufficient numbers of foster families to meet the needs of kids that are coming in.
Emily Easton with 4 Oaks says that children who don't find a family are placed into an emergency shelter.
We would much prefer if a child's going to be removed from their home, we believe that they deserve to still be in a home.
Easton says that common misconceptions could deter parents.
One myth we sometimes hear is, well, I'm not married. I don't have a partner. So does that disqualify me? No, it doesn't. Single folks can come and be licensed.
Now a mom of 5, including 3 foster children, Souter encourages parents to just go for it.
Children deserve families too, and they just need, like I said, they need that extra support in their life. And it's not their fault necessarily that they're in the foster care system.
From diversity, equity, and inclusion classes at universities to changes for school sports eligibility, it's another busy week at the Iowa legislature. Local 5's Connor O'Neill breaks down the bills lawmakers are trying to push forward.
Stephanie, it is a really busy week at the State House this week because it's the second legislative funnel. So all bills, including these 3 you're about to hear about, need to receive approval from the chamber it was introduced in and a committee passage in the other chamber. The Senate and House will be busy this week to pass as many bills as it can before Friday to avoid key legislation from dying this session. One bill that has to be passed would make the Iowa Board of Regents create a policy for the state's public universities to not require their students to enroll in a diversity, equity, and inclusion course to complete degrees. An exemption could be granted by the board if a student's course of study is primarily focused on racial, ethnic, or gender studies. Supporters of the bill argued that DEI classes censor balanced views, while opponents said history should be taught in full. A Senate subcommittee passed the legislation on Monday, and it now just needs a full committee approval to stay alive after Friday. The Senate, for a second straight year, will consider expanding disability coverage for firefighters, police officers, and emergency medical service providers. The bill would redefine the definition of cancer to cover all types under Iowa's presumptive disability law. Only 14 of the over 200 known cancer types are currently covered. The House voted with unanimous support last week, but now the bill must pass the Senate, where it failed to advance out of last year. And lastly, the Senate is considering legislation that passed the House to allow students at private schools to participate in sports and or extracurriculars like marching bands at public schools if they live within the district's boundaries and if their private school hasn't offered that sport in the past 2 years. This bill, like the other 2, passed the House earlier this month and just needs a Senate committee vote moving forward.
A fire at a fertilizer storage facility forced the entire town of Otley to evacuate. It's about 8 miles northwest of Pella. Local 5's Alex Fulton is in Otley with a look at what's left.
The Marion County Emergency Management Agency tells me the fertilizer storage facility here is a total loss. If you take a look here behind me, you can see the building is still smoldering. I'm told that it will continue to smolder potentially for several days. This evening, residents returned home after the entire town was evacuated. Several residents I talked with say they were evacuated around noon. The facility contained several different chemicals like urea, potash, monoammonium phosphate, and sulfur. Thankfully, there are no reported injuries and no reported damage to other neighboring structures. That's something that residents I talked with say they're so thankful for, that no flames spread to their homes. Now, the Pella Fire Department is handling this investigation, and the cause of the fire is still under investigation. In Otley, Alex Fulton, Local 5 News.
That building was a Two Rivers cooperative location. Within the last half hour, the company sent out a statement saying all staff are safe and accounted for. It also thanked the first responders for their help, saying in part, quote, "We also appreciate the support of the local community and businesses who have offered assistance during this time. For now, please know that safety remains our top priority."
Even though the Iowa State men's basketball team is out of the NCAA tournament, there will still be some Cyclone representation in San Antonio this week, where the team's managers will have a shot at winning a national title. The guys that are normally behind the bench will be stepping into the spotlight this week. For almost 10 years, managers from around the country have been invited to participate in the Manager Games national tournament during Final Four weekend. After receiving thousands of fan votes, the Iowa State men's basketball team managers earned a spot in this year's tournament.
Last year we made it, that we were kind of expecting to make it. So I think we're obviously very excited to go down to San Antonio. And it's cool because there's conventions down there too. So some of us senior managers can go talk to other coaches and stuff like that and hopefully make more connections as well while we're down there.
People have continued to show their support for the ISU managers by donating to help pay for their travel expenses. One of the donations came from former Cyclone and Indiana Pacers guard Tyrese Halliburton.
Oh, it's pretty cool to see in the field, just know that they're out there for the team, but they're out there for us as well too. So it's great. It's very accomplishing, and we take a lot of pride in that kind of thing.
The tournament was created to celebrate managers for their hard work and dedication and reward them with a fun weekend of competition.
I'm definitely happy for the managers that they can go to San Antonio, just because, I mean, what they do on a daily basis is probably a lot more than any other manager does in the country.
They're here probably earlier before us. They're staying after us. I mean, they dedicate a lot of their time to this, and I mean, I'm happy that they can get rewarded with that.
For the seniors, it's a memorable way to close out their final season.
This is great to have at the end of the year, just like everybody coming together, kind of having a fun time. You know, we get to go down there and play, obviously, but these guys are like a family to me. So just being able to go down there and kind of enjoy a vacation with them, it's really meaningful to me.
Usually operating in the shadows, the managers are getting their time to shine.
State lawmakers are working to solidify existing election laws by removing the possibility of using a ranked choice voting system in the future. Our Connor O'Neill tells us why some Iowans are fighting to keep this system as a legal alternative, even though the state doesn't use it in elections.
A Senate subcommittee advanced a bill Tuesday that would ban ranked choice voting in the state, which allows voters to do what you think, order candidates by preference from first to last on their ballots, and if a candidate wins a majority of first preference votes, they are declared the winner.
People are sick and tired of it, and they're looking for a solution. We support ranked choice voting because it's practical, there's mountains of data on it. Despite what some folks have been saying, it works just as well as the system that we have here.
However, ranked choice voting is not used in the state. Opponents of the bill argued runoff and ranked choice voting would allow more candidates to run for office and erase partisanship, while supporters said this election method is too confusing and would take election officials longer to tally the winner.
To people that are not familiar with it, they will not understand it first, and this is an opportunity for to confuse people, and actually it will disenfranchise people because it's confusing, it's very confusing.
Opponents of the bill also claim ranked choice voting can save local governments money if it chooses to use it, while supporters countered, saying the opposite is true if the state would have to explain to voters how the process would work.
We thankfully have a great process in Iowa as compared to other states, but I think we all recognize some changes are in order as well.
With the bill passing through a Senate subcommittee on Tuesday, it now needs a full committee approval by Friday to survive the second legislative funnel moving forward. Reporting from the Iowa State Capitol, Connor O'Neill, Local 5 News.
Well, Iowa could soon offer licenses for pediatric palliative care under a House bill nicknamed Mason's Law. Currently, there are only 7 hospice centers specifically for children across the U.S. Local 5's Alex Fulton explains the bill's progress and shares the story that inspired it. Alex.
Well, Stephanie, Mason's Law is making its way through the legislature. It's already passed unanimously in the House and will be voted on in the Health and Human Services Senate subcommittee tomorrow. The bill ensures families don't have to travel across state lines to access care, as Mason Seek did.
No matter what he was going through, he wanted to focus off of him and on somebody else.
At the age of 2, Mason Seek from Grinnell was diagnosed with Gardner syndrome.
He would get colon cancer for sure, and was at high risk for many cancers, and then also had desmoid tumors.
Mason's mom, Shanna Seek, says just before his 7th birthday, he was put on hospice. At first, they tried home hospice.
That didn't work well for us. We just couldn't get his pain under control. It was just very hard to watch him go through the pain.
The Seek family searched for a hospice center and only found ones for adults in Iowa.
What we ran into was one parent could stay, not both. We also ran into our other kids could only be there so many hours.
They later discovered a center specifically for children called Crescent Cove, only it was all the way in Minneapolis.
Nobody wants to lose their child. Nobody. And no matter how much you think you're prepared for it, you're not.
Jonathan Cotter with the National Center for Pediatric Palliative Care Homes oversees the center where Mason spent his final moments.
I think a lot of people will look at a house like this from the outside and think this is a sad place, that this is all about death and dying. And it really is not. It is about enhancing the quality of life.
In Mason's honor, Shanna helped draft a bill to establish pediatric hospice care centers in Iowa.
Mason just loved it at Crescent Cove, and he very much, would wake up and say, "Mom, I love it here." And he also had said that he wished that every kid that needed a place like Crescent Cove had one.
Now, Shanna is really ready to hit the ground running if this bill becomes law. She's already secured land in Iowa City to establish a pediatric hospice center called Mason's Lighthouse.
Just hours ago, Des Moines police released body and dash camera footage showing the moments before 2 Des Moines police officers shot a suspect, David Kintz Jr., who later died. The video's release comes as both Iowa Attorney General Brenna Bird and Polk County Attorney Kimberly Graham determined the early February shooting was legally justified. Now, before we show you this video, we do want to warn our viewers that discretion is advised.
321, shots fired, shots fired.
Before the shooting, narcotics officers with the Des Moines Police Department were surveilling a woman's vehicle on the evening of February 6th as part of an ongoing drug investigation. Officers saw David Kintz Jr. exit that vehicle with a duffel bag. The two officers, Titus DeFord and Neil Schaefer, then go to make contact with Kintz. When asked to take his hands out of his pocket, Kintz complied. He tells Officer DeFord he has COVID and offers to let him search his bag. As Officer Schaefer arrives, Kintz put his hand back in his pockets. As Officer DeFord felt Kintz's pocket, he notices a long, slim object. Kintz tells him it's a screwdriver. Kintz then pulls it out of his pocket, holds it overhead, and goes towards Schaefer with it. Both officers, who are multiple feet away from Kintz, then open fire on him. Kintz is handcuffed, and Officers Schaefer and DeFord performed life-saving measures until an ambulance arrived. Kintz later died at a hospital. We begin tonight with news from the Capitol after the governor signed hands-free driving legislation into law. Iowans are now limited to a single touch to turn your phone on or off and can only fully use your phone while at a complete stop, like during a red light. Our Connor O'Neill shares with us the stories of impacted families who pushed for this legislation for years.
As the governor officially made Iowa the 31st state in the U.S. to have a hands-free driving law on Wednesday, a room of nearly 100 people looked on. It was a moment survivors and family members who have lost loved ones to distracted driving have waited years for.
There was a car cutting the corner, and when I looked at the person, their head was down on the phone, distracted driving. And that was one of those moments where you always hear about it, and it goes through your mind. What was the last thing I said to my wife? What was the last thing I said to my kids, my grandkids?
I had a terrible accident. I ended up having to have 2 surgeries. I was in the hospital for 17 days and off work for 2 months. But I actually feel like I'm one of the lucky ones because I can tell you my story today.
Some of those family members who lost their spouse or their child to a driver who was texting while driving, having the courage to tell their stories again.
Our daughter, Ellen, was killed on August 2nd, 2020, just outside of Charles City. She was hit and thrown into a ditch and died by a distracted driver.
She was just walking on the side of the road,
and the driver took their eyes off the road for a little bit, was distracted with their phone, and I got there and they were doing CPR on the street.
Verba said even though he can't bring his wife Jenny back, knowing this law will help save more lives makes him and so many others happy.
It's this generation's safety issue. It was like wear seatbelts and don't drink drunk when I was learning to drive. This is the safety issue for this generation that have to deal with this, to protect yourself and your family and other innocent people that are out there on the roads today.
Reporting from the State House, Connor O'Neill, Local 5 News.
President Donald Trump speaking from the White House Rose Garden this afternoon, calling today Liberation Day, as he announced a new tariff plan that will impact all goods imported to America. It's a plan he says will create more fairness for the U.S. and bring manufacturing back to the states. Larissa Leone joins us with more on Trump's plan and how Iowa leaders are reacting.
Well, Stephanie, Trump's tariff announcement is a moment months in the making for the president. Trump described trade deficits as a, quote, national emergency, and that his actions will usher in what he called the golden age of America. Tonight, we'll take a look at the layout of his plans and the response from Iowa lawmakers. Wednesday afternoon, President Trump announced a sweeping set of baseline tariffs on all trading partners and what he describes as reciprocal tariffs on nations he claims have the worst reputation in trade relation with the U.S.
Americans, this is Liberation Day.
The new rollout of measures include a minimum baseline tariff of 10% on all trading partners and reciprocal tariffs for countries including China, European Union, and Taiwan, as displayed by a chart Trump held up with a list of nations and what the new U.S. reciprocal tariffs will be.
Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them.
Governor Kim Reynolds released a statement of support of Trump's plan, saying in part, quote, President Trump is using tariffs as leverage to force our trading partners to the table and put America's farmers first. Reynolds went on to state, my job is to protect Iowans, and I'm working directly with the administration to ease the short-term impact, keep our ag economy strong, and open the door to new export opportunities. Democrats are critical of Trump's decision.
We're going to fight these tariffs tooth and nail. Trump's done a lot of bad things. This is way up there.
Back at home, Democratic Chair Rita Hart shared a statement on X saying in part, quote, it's clear that Iowa's representatives in Washington are either inept or too afraid to fight back. They voted to give away the farm to a president more focused on tariffs than lower prices. Senator Chuck Grassley responded to Trump's announcement, saying he's going to wait and see how these reciprocal tariff negotiations play out. But he says Iowans can count on him to keep an eye on them.
I'm a free and fair trader. If President Trump is successful in reducing tariffs in other countries, I'm going to say amen, praise the Lord. But if he's unsuccessful, I'll say, I told you so.
Iowa does not have any birth centers, dedicated facilities for childbirth where care is provided by midwives. A House bill is trying to change that by getting rid of an application fee to become one. Local 5's Alex Fulton shares how it could help providers and patients.
Well, Stephanie, midwives tell me the bill is really about removing barriers and letting mothers decide what's best for them. It comes after at least 41 maternity wards have closed in Iowa since 2000.
We do so many things here.
At Des Moines Midwife Collective off Euclid, women can be treated for ear infections, UTIs, and other conditions.
We have a fully functioning lactation clinic, and we also provide maternity services.
When it's time for a woman to give birth, that service must be performed off-site at the mother's home.
It gives you a lot more autonomy and freedom of movement at home, freedom of choice, when it comes to eating or drinking in labor.
In order to offer the service on-site, the collective's owner, Caitlin Hanley, would have to pay $20,000 to become a birth center.
I don't really want to pay $20,000 just to get told no. Who has that kind of money lying around?
A House bill is looking to get rid of the Certificate of Need requirement, making it easier to establish birth centers across Iowa.
About a dozen states require a Certificate of Need, and none of the surrounding states require that.
Megan Day with Friends of Iowa Midwives has been advocating for its passage.
Commonly, our midwives travel an hour to 2 hours for home birth deliveries, and this would give them the opportunity to serve clients in their own area and their own birth centers.
The bill would ultimately give mothers everywhere another option.
We believe in freedom of choice, but right now nobody has the choice to birth in a birth center.
Fears among thousands of Iowans who could be at risk of losing Medicaid coverage are growing. Republicans are pushing a bill that would require Iowans to work at least 80 hours a month to qualify. Local 5's Megan McPherson spoke with one Iowan who believes her work may not fit that mold.
This legislation only applies to able-bodied Iowans and does provide exceptions for specific groups. But the language surrounding volunteer work is causing concern for some. Kathy Burns has transformed the yard of her Sherman Hills home into an urban farm.
They're just getting started for the day.
Collecting eggs from her backyard flock, honey from a colony of bees, even using fresh fruit and produce from the garden for salads and baked goods, and teaching other people to do the same.
We are busy teaching people to grow food.
Burns and her husband Ed both work long hours here, but as a nonprofit, they're not earning much.
I don't get paid anything. I have no income. In fact, our urban farm is operating at a loss right now.
Living below the poverty level, Kathy qualifies for the state's health and wellness plan, receiving free health care. She's just one of the 700,000 Iowans on Medicaid, and one of 32,000 who could lose coverage next year if proposed legislation becomes law. Under the bill, recipients would have to work at least 80 hours a month to qualify, with some exceptions. Burns worries her work may not qualify.
I'm feeling quite at risk of losing my benefit if the bill as written is passed, because they've removed the volunteer portion of that.
Estimates from the nonpartisan Legislative Services Agency show this would save the state more than $3 million in the first year and more than $17 million in the second year and years after that. But economist Mark Immerman believes that those savings will cost the state's economy in other areas.
$17.5 million a year for the state budget turns into about $151 million in health care expenditures that won't be made in the state. That's big.
His economic model predicts the state losing more than 1,000 jobs, mainly in the healthcare industry.
They think they're saving $17.5 million. They're going to be surprised.
Immerman was also surprised to learn that the Department of Health and Human Services, which runs the system, did not provide any information to LSA on fiscal implications of the bill. A member of the agency tells Local 5 that they did not receive a response to multiple information requests from HHS.
The Pella Fire Department has lifted an evacuation and shelter-in-place order for Ottley residents 3 days after a fire at a fertilizer storage facility. Larissa Leone made a trip out there to see how residents are feeling about Marion County's response.
Stephanie, I'm here in Ottley where residents are just now able to get back inside their homes after a fertilizer fire happened on Monday, leading Marion County to issue an evacuation order for residents in the area. Now things are looking better on the actual site, but residents here tell me they're still feeling a little unsafe after the fire. Flames are out from a fertilizer fire in Ottley that started on Monday. A spokesperson for Marion County EMA said burning sulfur was the cause of the smoke. If inhaled, sulfur smoke can cause health issues to humans and pets.
It was a whole lot of shrugs and not a lot of answers.
David Van Hafen has been a homeowner in Ottley for 5 years. On the day of the fire, he says details about what chemicals were burning were not clearly communicated to him and his neighbors.
I remember leaving and seeing the kids still play on the playground while the smoke just kept rolling over, and they hadn't even issued an evacuation notice yet.
On Tuesday, Marion County EMA recommended some Ottley residents evacuate or shelter in place. Today, the EPA deemed the air quality safe, though Ottley homeowner Patty Van Haften says she feels the county needs a better emergency preparedness and communication plan.
Where was the plan? Where was the conversations for all this?
We've reached out to Marion County for further details on the response to residents, and we have not heard back. Patty says with the chemicals still at the scene of the fire, she's concerned on what that could mean if the city gets rained on.
All of this fertilizer is going to be exposed. and it's going to cause washout and all those nitrates and all those wonderful things that like Des Moines is fighting about in their water system is going to be here.
Now, one of the top concerns amongst the residents that I spoke to is just how close that fire site is to the waterworks. Now, I want to take a look over here and show you. There is the site right over there, and just a mere couple of yards is right where that water tower is. Now, officials tell me as of right now, there is no threat to the water supply. If we learn anything different, we will update you on air and online. In Otley, Larissa Leon, Local 5 News.